Hello, my friends. This is Evelina, life coach for immigrants, and today we are going to talk about Americans. I hope you're ready. This episode is for those of you that have a hard time making connections here, building relationships. You feel like you are not liked, you feel like Americans don't like you, and you're wondering if you're the only one who feels that way. I remember having those kind of thoughts when I first came to the US in my first interactions. And I can tell you honestly that I have met many immigrant women that have had similar thoughts. This is normal. And especially in the beginning, it's very, very normal to have this sort of opinion, but it does not necessarily, it's not a rule. It's not like you can't have this sort of a thought after being here for a long time. You still can. You know, oftentimes when we have honest conversations with the women that have a hard time building relationships here in the US, with Americans specifically, and we really talk about what's really going on and we get to the bottom of it, oftentimes it will come out that they feel like Americans are fake. They're nice to your face, but then when you leave a situation, let's say, then they talk behind your back. Before we even come to the US, we have all different kinds of thoughts and opinions about Americans. And those opinions are going to influence how we interact then with this nation. So it's not like we come not knowing anything, unless you come as a really like a small baby and you don't have any opinions beforehand. But majority of us come with already having a relationship to Americans before we even get to know them well. The reason why I'm saying it this way is that any relationship is really created in your mind. And you don't really have a relationship to Americans, you actually have a relationship to your thoughts about Americans. We'll go into this a little bit deeper, but this is really great news because it doesn't matter what you think about Americans today. It does not matter what your relationship with Americans today is like. You can influence and change that relationship. And you might want to. There's a lot of benefits that come from building strong, good friendships with Americans. First of all, when you connect to Americans, you're going to have a chance to really understand and fit into the American way of life. Right? You will no longer feel like this odd, weird creature, because you will know what to do. How often, especially in the beginning, we don't understand what's happening around us. We don't really understand the language. We have this feeling like we're this like odd duckling and we act in a weird way and because we feel weird. When you choose to take charge of this connection, of how you relate to Americans, you're gonna give yourself a chance to really stop feeling this way, and it's a beautiful thing. Another benefit, this is super obvious, you're gonna feel more confident. And it's gonna be way easier for you to get over any language barriers when you will be actually speaking with Americans. You're gonna feel less isolated. You're gonna start feeling this sense of belonging. You will not feel like an outsider all the time. And obviously having American friends can be super useful because they can give you tips on everyday things like understanding what's going on around you, finding your way around. You know, if you have questions, where do I buy this or that, they will be able to answer this for you. I remember when I first came and I did not understand what it meant when I was driving a car when in the evening, like the light would be flashing red or it would be flashing orange. I did not understand what it meant. And I remember talking to this wonderful young man who explained this to me in such an easy way. And he was compassionate enough not to make it a big deal, not to laugh at me. He was an American and super helpful, right? Very, very kind. And by the way, you guys, if you're hearing clicking noises, I gotta tell you, once again, my dog is just moving around my office. First, she was snoring like a crazy. And when I was recording, I'm like, I hope nobody can hear her snoring. Sure enough. There was so much, it was so loud. You could have heard her snoring. And now there's a lot of clicking noises. She gets up and starts walking around my office, and I'm done fighting with her about this. I'm done trying to convince her to sit down, and like, you're just gonna hear some clicking. That's my dog. That's what it is this time, okay? let's go back to the benefits. You will have a chance to ask questions and hear helpful answers. You're gonna stop feeling like a victim of your situation. Like, oh, I don't know because I didn't know what was. No. Americans are helpful and kind and loving. And I want to encourage you to today really take advantage of what I'll be sharing with you, because I'm going to give you a lot of tips. I'm going to give you a lot of questions at the very end that will help you shift this relationship. Because you see, here's the thing that happens. Before we even come to the United States, we have all different kinds of thoughts about Americans. That already is creating our relationship to this nation. And then we come, and our mind will look for situations that will confirm that we were right. So, for example, I had, thanks to President Bush, I believe, that made a comment about some country in Africa. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he said something that was so ridiculous, something super basic about a country in Africa. I'm like, he doesn't understand that it's a country in Africa. There was just something about his lack of basic geography. I was like, oh, okay. If the president doesn't know this, right, what about the rest of them? That's basically what you ask yourself. Overall, we had this opinion, and listen, I'm gonna be first one to admit, so unfair. But it's true. Before I came to the US, I thought that Americans are not very intelligent. Today I know it's not true. There are plenty that are very, very smart. But coming back then in 2005, I thought that they're not. And particularly, I thought that many of Americans don't know basic geography. And there is a little bit of truth to that, right? There is. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I want to tell you is that my mind, because I had this opinion that they're not very smart, and particularly they're not very good at knowing geography of the world. When I first came to the US and I was meeting Americans, I would meet people who knew exactly where Poland is and were very interested in Poland. And I also would meet Americans that had no idea. I remember being asked by this one guy, because at first I told him I was from Poland and he was confused. And so I told him it's in Europe, and he was still confused. And then I said, you know where Europe is, right? And he said, oh, isn't that like a country in South America? Right? I mean, it's ignorant, right? It's ignorant not to know that Europe is a continent. At the same time, what I want to tell you is this. My brain grasped on that interaction and held on to that interaction till today, because it was just ridiculous on one hand, but on the other hand, it was confirming my cognitive bias. That situation was confirming that Americans don't know much about geography. And so, even though I met many Americans that knew exactly where Poland is, my brain was filtering out only the instances that confirmed my truth. I'm saying this to you because I want for you to know that this is happening all the time. And so, especially where it comes to negative judgment. So if you came to the US already with a lot of negative judgment around Americans, your relationship to this country and to this nation will be heavily influenced by those judgments. So please be honest with yourself. What did you believe before you came, and what do you still believe about this nation? Anything negative is not going to help you build connections. It's going to make it harder. There's this one thing that I want for you to think about. When we form a real relationship, we start seeing beyond stereotypes. And this is working both ways. In other words, when you get to know Americans better, you will give yourself a chance to start creating a more open and respectful connection. But at the same time, the same thing exactly will be happening for the American that you will be interacting with. They will be seeing you from a different perspective. They'll be able to go beyond the stereotypes that they might have in their heads around immigrants. So that's when a connection can actually really happen. And when a connection can happen, there can be an exchange of higher frequency feelings. There can be an exchange of respect, love, appreciation, kindness, compassion, right? So how are we gonna go about this? How am I gonna help you address this? I have a bunch of questions for you. If you want to feel more comfortable around Americans, we have to take matters in our own hands. I have some great news for you, my friend, because every single relationship you have in your life, every single one, is created in your mind. I hear you say, Evelina, I don't have a relationship with Americans. Yeah, you do. You do. If you have thoughts about them, you have a relationship with them. Your thoughts about Americans create that relationship. Before you came to the US, you already knew that there are Americans living here. All the thoughts that you had about Americans were already creating that relationship. Before you even came here to the US and maybe met your first American ever. So that's the number one thing I want for you to remember, that every relationship is really created by your thoughts about them, okay? About it, about them, whatever it is that you're connecting to in your life, that relationship is created by your thoughts about it. That's what creates the mental connection. So there's one more extra layer that's kind of underneath it all. Here's the extra layer. You don't really have a relationship with Americans. What you actually have a relationship with is your thoughts about them. I know this is a little complicated. I'll say it one more time. You don't have a relationship with Americans. You actually have a relationship with your thoughts about them. Because our outside world reflects back to us what we have within us. And these relationships, these connections that we create first from our mental level, reflect back to us what we first establish in our mental field. You know, if you were to think about Americans as a nation that's, millions of people that are all different kinds of personalities, some pleasant, some not pleasant, introverted, extroverted, easygoing, kind of harsh. It's just a melting pot of all different kinds of people and personalities, right? Different ages, genders, all of it. Mix. So there's that. So how come we have different relationship, right? We have different thoughts, we have different behaviors when it comes to Americans. If it's just this group of people, how come we act differently towards it? How come our thoughts about Americans are not all the same if it's all the same, just group of people? It's because it all goes through the filter of our perception. There are immigrants that absolutely love Americans, love hanging out with them, love everything about them. Is it possible that those immigrants only meet the Americans that are honest and smart and genuine? And then, maybe you have not had that experience, and out of all the people in America, you have this luck that you only meet the less intelligent ones, the less genuine. Other people, well, it's different for them, but you just meet the mean ones. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You are magnetic and you attract, but you also filter. Your perception is like a filter. So someone could be really nice to you and you might not be able to see it simply because your mind is not focusing on that at all. Your mind is looking very, very hard to find all the evidence that Americans are not genuine and they're really harsh and they judge immigrants really harshly, right? But this truly is fantastic news. Because if you are a cause of this relationship, a cause of this dynamic, we can address it. If you want Americans to like you, the number one thing that we gotta do is we have to find out, why do you feel like they don't? Is it that maybe you act weird around them? And be honest with yourself. Are you acting like a weirdo? I used to do it. That's why I'm asking you straight up. Very possible that you're acting weird. I remember I would do two things. At first, I was super shy. It was almost like I was on a spectrum. I was either super shy and I would be super quiet, really, really withdrawn, which people who knew me from Poland before I came to the US would be like, what? What? That's Evelina? Yeah, Evelina, super quiet, like withdrawn because I was afraid to open my mouth. Or, on the other hand, there came a time when I felt more comfortable speaking English and I became way more extroverted than I've ever been. I would talk a lot and try influence people's thoughts about me to think that I'm cool and I'm like easygoing and super open, and I would talk about all different kinds of things. Both of these spectrums, extroverted and introverted, were not genuine. There were moments, right? Because nothing is black and white. So there were moments of genuinity in that experience, but overall, what was going on underneath it was this manipulative agenda. Let me talk so much. Let me show you how outgoing I am and fun to be with I am so that you will like me. Let me be extremely introverted and quiet and ask you questions so that I don't have to talk, even when I feel like I want to say something, because I want you to think that I'm really interested in you and I want you to like me. Either way, it's manipulative and it's nasty, and we do not want to be in that dynamic at all. I want you to create relationships from a secure place. From a place of, I know who I am. I know what I like about me. I know what are the elements that give me a hard time, but I'm in charge of it. And I am able to address it as I go. And in the meantime, I have compassion for myself. And I understand that this is a process. I'm going to be patient with myself and I'm going to figure it out. First step to figuring it out, my immigrant weirdo. If this is you, I'm sending you a big virtual hug if you have been a weirdo around Americans, because I get it. I've been there. I've done it for a long time. My heart goes out to you. I know that you want to build relationships because you want to feel good here. And you feel lonely and you feel like you don't belong and you feel like an outsider and you have a good heart and you genuinely want to connect. I get that. And I am sorry that it's been such a harsh experience for you. And one of the reasons why I'm recording this podcast is that I wish someone told me what I am about to tell you. I'm going to give you a whole series of questions where you can really self-examine and get to the other side of this dynamic. And I really hope that you will do this because that's where the answers are. Everything you need is within you. We just need to take a step back, look at it from a little bit of a different perspective. And these questions that I will give you will give you a chance to get there. But my honest wish is that none of you, my wonderful, courageous immigrant women, will be feeling like a weirdo here in the US. Just let's stop with that nonsense. Let's self-examine and see that those relationships can be created on purpose. We have everything we need. We have tools to address these relationships and create them from a point of power and decision. And honestly, my wonderful women, you deserve to feel good here in the US. You deserve to build relationships that give you a sense of belonging and a sense of stability. You deserve that. You've earned it with your courage to come here in the first place. And so let's make sure now we go into the basics. Let's explore some basics. First of all, why do you want to connect to Americans? Take a piece of paper and answer that simple question. Why do I want to connect to Americans? What is it about my life here that will change for better when I do connect to Americans? Is it that maybe you have a baby on the way and you know that this child of yours will eventually go to preschool, school, etc., and you don't want to be that odd mom that doesn't talk to other moms? You actually want to make sure that the child has a good chance of building solid relationships within their circle. So you have to be the one that shows how it's done, right? And by the way, also you want to be able to connect to other moms here in the US. You will want to feel supported by them as you're going through this experience of motherhood. And yes, connecting to American women that are in a similar situation is gonna be absolutely priceless. So this is why you would want to connect to Americans. Maybe that's your case, right? Maybe for some of you, it's that you have a business and you want to network, and you know that you're holding your business back by not connecting to Americans, and you actually on purpose network amongst Americans. Maybe that's the case. And so your life will improve because you will have these new connections. So yes, that's another question. How will this improve your life when you actually connect to Americans? And then why do you deserve to build strong connections here in the US? Why you as an immigrant woman or man deserve to have strong, solid connections. Now, what will your life be like when you will have a few good American friends? I want you to really think about this. When you will be able to just go anywhere and talk to anyone with ease and zero stress, right? Because you're also gonna build this like rapport with Americans, and it's gonna be easier to communicate with other Americans, not just with your friends, but with other Americans too. How will that feel like when you can just leave your house and go to get coffee or go grocery shopping and know that you can just do it with ease and you don't have to stress about talking to the cashier at the store, for example? If you know that it doesn't matter if you're talking to an immigrant or American, you can just easily communicate. What will that experience be like for you? And I also want you to think about the opposite of that. If you don't address this and you won't change your relationship with Americans to one that's more positive, what will your life situation be like a few years from now? What opportunities are you holding yourself back from? Now we're gonna go into that problem a little bit deeper. And since we're exploring this idea that Americans don't like you, for some of you have this thought, right? Americans don't like me, or they don't like people with accents, We're gonna go deeper into this. I want for you to first of all ask yourself, who doesn't like me? You want to be very specific here. You want to write their names. Oftentimes it will be just one person, maybe two, right? And why do you believe that that person or these people don't like you? What did they do for you to believe that they don't like you? And then when they did that thing that caused you to think they don't like me, what did you make it mean about yourself? That's a very important question. I remember when I went once to a party, there was a group of American women, and I started a conversation with one of them. And there was maybe like 6, maybe 7 of us. And this one person didn't really want to talk to me. She gave me a cold shoulder. But in a moment, my mind chose to believe that none of them wanted to talk to me. None of them. And it was just one person, right? So this is why we've got to be specific, because our brains like to generalize and like to put everyone in one bucket, even when those people don't belong there. So I want you to be very, very specific here, because again, it could be that your mind has really made an unfair assumption, okay? When you believe that someone does not like you, what do you do then? How do you act? How does that belief influence your behavior? Do you shut down or do you talk more? Next question. We're gonna go in a different direction now, by the way. Is there an American that you like? Is there someone you had a pleasant interaction with? And then who is it? Make a list. It's gonna be probably a pretty long list of Americans that were nice to you, because Americans are nice. It's one of the things that I really like about this nation, is that they're very nice people. So when you talked to this person or those people, what happened exactly? And what did you like about them? And now, again, we're going to turn it to you. When you believe that someone likes you, how do you speak to them? How do you feel in their company? How do you act? I have more questions, friends. Are you ready? Here we go. And this is an important question. What do you like about yourself? What do you like about you? Why is it that someone would want to interact with you? Why would they want to talk to you in the first place? This might be hard to answer. You might be like, I don't know, Well, then guess, right? What is it that's interesting about you? One of the things that I don't think we take in consideration as immigrants, I know a lot of my clients don't, and I didn't either for a very long time, is that just because we are from a different part of the world, and just because we speak more than one language, and that we have like this whole world inside of us from our, in a way, previous life, we are very interesting to talk to. It's almost like that wealth of knowledge that we have within us, that in the beginning we feel like nobody understands us because there's this whole world that we cannot express. If we can share some of that with Americans around us, that could be a beautiful place of connection for us and them. So maybe there are some things about your culture that are interesting, fascinating, that you would want to share with Americans when you are in social situations. Maybe before you go to a Christmas party, or actually Easter is coming up, so maybe that would be a better subject, better holiday to talk about. Before you go to Easter, to spend Easter with your new American family, maybe think about what are the traditions that you celebrate during this time, during Easter time in your country of origin, right? How do you celebrate Easter, if at all? Maybe you don't celebrate Easter, but if you do, what is that like? What is the equivalent of Easter where you're from? Every culture we celebrate renewal of nature. What is that like in your culture? It doesn't have to be a Catholic holiday or Christian holiday. It could be something where you're literally talking about the closing of the season of winter and opening the season of spring. All the cultures, there is something related to that. And maybe you can talk about those traditions that you have in your country. In Poland, you know what we do in Poland? We have this marzanna, which is basically like a stuffed doll made out of hay. And we lit it on fire and then we throw it in a lake. Yeah. Yeah. That would be interesting to share with Americans, right? I mean, it's an interesting thing. They would be like, what? Why do you do that? And then I would say, I don't know. I'd have to research it. But there are some things that are interesting about your culture, I'm sure of it. Maybe now make a list of all the things that you would want to share with Americans if you could. Okay, we're gonna keep on going here. I have more questions for you. If you were to have a nice interaction with an American, or maybe you can think of one that was particularly nice, what was it like? Or if you didn't have one, what would it be like? I want for you to go into the land of possibility here. What would you think about the person that you are speaking with during that interaction or after? If it was really a pleasant interaction, what would that feel like? Now, there's some things that I want you to realize, and that's that during this exercise, you might discover a few thoughts, few beliefs about yourself that you don't like, that don't make you feel confident or strong. I always feel awkward. I don't know how to speak to Americans. My English is not that good, so I'm afraid I will make a mistake and say something stupid. It's quite normal if you have those kind of thoughts come up. It's a very good thing for you to see that they're in your mind though, because thoughts create feelings. And so when you think to yourself, my English is not that good, I'm afraid I will make a mistake and say something stupid, oftentimes what ends up actually happening is that you shut down and then you don't practice talking to Americans, speaking English, and your ability to speak this language is not getting any better. And so it's almost like you're proving this point to yourself that you can speak and you feel more and more stupid because you're not practicing speaking it, right? So it's good to see why that's happening. Because you could be also thinking, yeah, my English is not that good, but I'm gonna go to this event today and I'm gonna try speaking the best I can, and I will make mistakes, but that's no big deal. It's okay. Mistakes are part of the process. Every time I go, every time I try, I'm gonna get better and better and better. And one day I will just be speaking with ease and it will be no problem because it is a process. So you see, having an awareness of what's really happening in your mind around this subject is giving you a chance to change, to shift something, because thoughts create feelings and feelings cause us to do something or not to do something. That's why we start in that first area. That's why we start in the mental field. Okay, my friends. Now, for those of you that have done this exercise, or maybe you started doing it, or maybe you're like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. I have no idea how to do this. This is too hard. Just contact me, talk to me. What I have given you is a bunch of questions. When I talk to my clients during a coaching session, same thing happens. I ask questions. Obviously, when we are on a coaching call, when it's one-on-one interaction, I will not be asking you generic questions. I'll be asking you questions about your specific situation. So that's why having a coach and having someone to talk to can be so incredibly helpful, because I will help you address your situation. It's not going to be this, maybe that, maybe this, or maybe that. No, it will be questions tailored specifically to your situation. I am very strongly encouraging those of you who feel stuck and who feel overwhelmed and you feel like there's something wrong with you, like you should be able to communicate better, you should be able to have deeper relationships, you should be way further ahead in your immigrant journey in building this American dream life that you came here to build, and you should have an easier time in life and you don't for whatever reason, and you're confused about it, right? And you should be happy, by the way, and you're not happy. For those of you that feel this way, please connect with me. I specialize in helping my immigrant women get out of those mental spaces. The reason why I specialize in it is because I myself have been in that place for a very long time and I didn't have help. And my life turned upside down for quite some time because I felt so confused and so unhappy. And my heart goes out to you if you're in that space. I was there for so long. I get it. I understand it. It's hard. It's hard for us immigrant women especially, because who is there to help you, right? I remember when I was in my deep state of confusion and I mentioned it to one of my friends. She's American, by the way. I remember mentioning it to her and she looked and she was like, well, you could talk to a therapist. You could go to a counselor. And I looked at her like, what are you talking about? And I didn't say it back to her because I just didn't, but I thought to myself, how could I explain to this person in English what's going on within me if I don't understand it in Polish? How could I? Right? I didn't have grasp on it. So if you're in a similar spot, reach out to me. All right, my wonderful friends. If you need that, you will find a link in the description of this show. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.